part two of our business plan, business plan development, growing your business. I'm joined by my colleague Gustavo, who's working from home. He's having some technical issues with his computer at work, so there may be a few other people joining us in a few minutes as everyone adapts to the 9 o'clock time, but I want to respect everybody's time. We will end by 10 o'clock. This is part two. My name is Rob Ruthio. I work here at the Beaverton Area Chamber of Commerce as Director of Small Business Support and Development. Also joining myself and Gustavo is our translator, Jessica. If you haven't already clicked on the little translate button at the bottom of your screen, you can do so that you can hear in either English or Spanish. There will be a recording available after today's session. Gustavo posts those. We have a YouTube channel on Impact Beaverton where you can also catch last week's. What I would like to do today, and it's a very small group, and I don't know if others will be joining us this morning. So we'll have plenty of time for questions. What I'm going to do is just run through real quick a summary of what we covered last week. I got through about half the slides last time. Really focusing on what you can do as a growing business to develop a business plan that will help you in terms of attracting new customers, attracting potential investors, attracting or qualifying for loans to be able to grow your business. Again, our Impact Beaverton program is something that's a collaboration between the city and the Beaverton Area Chamber of Commerce as a support for small businesses in and around Beaverton. I went through the goals last week, and again, the primary goal for our workshop is helping guide you as a growing business and developing a business plan that will not only help you as the business owner in guiding the development of your business, but also it's a way to, if you're looking for investors, if you're trying to qualify for a loan to expand into facilities, et cetera, that is the goal. And I'm not going to go through all these details today. We went through these, and I know the few of you that are on the call or on the workshop today were with us last week, so I don't want to be too repetitive. We went through the outline. I know most of you already know kind of if you have a question as we go, you can post them in chat. Gustavo will be monitoring the chat as we go along, and I will take pauses along the way. And again, there are several components to a growing business plan. Last week, we got through kind of the company history, the products and or services, a little bit of the marketing analysis and operations. Today, we're going to get marketing sales plan and some of the financial plans in more detail. So we talked about this a little bit last week. One of the first elements is your company history, and I used this example of Delicious Diner as we went through. So a little background on your company, what's made it successful, et cetera. Then you go over kind of products and services, what you've been doing. And again, I'm going through these quickly now because this is part two. Covered these in detail last time. So if you're looking at this or seeing this video or workshop for the first time and have not seen part one, suggest you watch part one first and then come back and review this one again at a later time. This will make more sense because I'm going to go through these first few slides really quick. So that overview of your products and services and how you might be adapting or changing your products and services as you grow as a business. We talked about the importance of market analysis and really having very specific data that suggests why your business is right for growth, right? Is there growing population? Is there growing demand for your product? Have some of your competitors maybe gone out of business, et cetera? So you really, if you're trying to attract, get significant loans or attract investors, or even to guide your own development as a business, maybe to attract maybe top-notch employees that might want to come work for you, you really need to have some specific data that suggests not only why your business was successful in the past, but why it is right for growth. And I went through this last week, but this is an absolutely critical piece of the growing business plan, is having specific data that shows your company is not only positioned for growth, but the markets out there are going to support your growth plans. Right? So when we talk this about operation plans, it's being very specific about what you want to do. And with our example of Delicious Diner, it's a fictitious organization, but suggested they opened back in 2005. It's now, 15 plus years later. They have only 4 locations, but now they're ripe for growth into new markets. They're looking to grow, open 2 new stores. So it's being very specific about your growth potential, but also not being overly optimistic, but also not being too slow. They wouldn't want to open 10 new stores or jump into brand new markets too fast. But the idea is, how are you going to grow? what's your expansion plan specifically? Okay, and this is where we left off last time. This was the last slide that we covered last time, and talking about kind of a marketing and sales plan about how you're going to go about as you grow as a business, how you're going to reach those new customers, how you're going to reach new markets, how you're going to tap into new customer bases. With our example of a restaurant, obviously move into a new location, you would be doing advertising, maybe social media, maybe you put on a billboard if you're along the freeway, etc. If you're a different kind of business, there's going to be other strategies that are going to work. What I'm not focusing on, and this would be a topic for a later workshop, is if you wanted to expand internationally, that is a very different type of expansion. And that would be something that we would cover in a different workshop. I don't plan to cover that much today. So this is where we got through last time. So that's just a kind of quick 5-minute catch up to where we left off last week. What I want to cover now is the next set of details that you would include in your growing business plan. And the big part of it is the finances, right? It's having the numbers that are available. And when you're talking about financing, there's a couple of different key components to finances for growing a business that you would put in your business plan. And if you think in terms of two major parts, there's the capital budgeting, or budgeting for equipment, new facilities, et cetera. So the big chunks of money. And then there's the operations, the day-to-day operations, right? We'll come to the operations in just a few minutes. We'll also talk a little bit about having your balance sheet available, right? Your assets and your liabilities and your net assets. But the first key component to your budgeting and projected budgeting when you are doing a growing business plan is, what is it going to cost you to expand your operations, right? So we're talking about a restaurant in this example. So I'll use that example first, and then I'll talk about some other businesses that might be expanding in other ways. So again, the capital budget is your expected expenses for new big stuff, equipment, facilities, et cetera. If you're relatively familiar with the budgeting process, et cetera, these are your depreciable assets, right? So this is new facilities, new buildings, new equipment, new vehicles, et cetera. So the capitals, and this is the stuff that typically, if you're going to get a loan, these are the things loan banks and other lending agencies want to fund, is things that are equipment, things that are tangible assets, not so much operating expenses or necessarily employees or payroll, but equipment and expansion, so that there's actually some physical either structures or equipment, technology, et cetera, is another part of it. And so these are the costs that basically cost you almost upfront so that you can expand. That's not as it kind of goes through the process. It's okay, we need to build a new facility. So with a restaurant, it's how do we get our restaurant ready, set up to open? Now, the example with Delicious Diner, there's kind of two different options, right? So if you think about when you are expanding as a restaurant and opening new locations, there's two different kind of ways that you can expand. One, you can go into a facility that is already a restaurant, right? That already has basic equipment and has basic materials and has basic supplies. And the cost to outfit to get that location ready for you to open business is going to be significantly less than if you are going into a non-restaurant location. Now, there's other considerations, particularly in the restaurant business, that if there's a building that's there and it's had 3 failed restaurants in the last 5 years, you probably should really consider whether you want to take over that location. It's what I call restaurant karma. That may or may not be the best location, but it's attractive sometimes to think about moving into a new location or into a restaurant that's already got the facilities. And I just kind of made up numbers. I mean, they're reasonable estimates, but if you look, it would be, if we're going to expand Delicious Diner, we're going to move into a new location that was a restaurant, right? Our costs for actually moving into that location are going to be relatively less. And what we're looking at here is that we're not trying to buy the building itself, right? So that would be a whole additional cost. What we're doing is we're going to lease the facility, we're going to take it over, and maybe eventually buy the building. But in this case, we're not buying the actual building. It's like we're going to move into a location. There's a location available. It becomes something that we can lease and we can outfit. If we're going to buy or build a new building, that's a very different story and much more expensive. But even if it's an existing restaurant, we still have to bring in our equipment. We still have to decorate in our branding and our theme and our guidelines. Right. And so I just have an estimation of what it would cost as to go into an existing restaurant. What would it cost for kitchen equipment? What would it cost to put in kind of customer seating areas and booths and tables? What's it going to cost to put in a new register or computers, decorations, right? So, and then we'll have, contractors are going to come in and probably do some additional work, maybe to the heating or the plumbing or electrical, et cetera. So there's going to be some other costs, maybe some painting costs, et cetera. And you're always going to have some estimate of additional costs, unexpected costs, other costs, miscellaneous costs. And then if we're going into a non-restaurant, it's going to cost significantly more, right? So, and I just broke this down of that if we were to open and go into an existing restaurant, would estimate about $70,000 or $71,000 we need. If we're going to go into a facility that's a retail space but wasn't set up as a restaurant, it's going to cost us significantly more, $129,000. Now, one of the things that, I kind of made these numbers work this way. If we're going to open 2 new restaurants each year, and say we would target, we want to open 1 new one each year in an existing restaurant, and we're going to look or find maybe a retail space that's not a restaurant, you can see the combined total cost is $200,000 a year. So we know that we would need about $200,000 each year for the next 3 years to be able to meet our goal of opening 2 new restaurants a year for those 3 years. So this is what I mean by the capital budgeting. This is how much money we need to be able to expand our business. And this is before we basically even open the doors to those businesses. So this is your capital budgeting. Now, the note that, a couple other notes here. This does not, or this number doesn't show specific categories for permits, licensing, et cetera, or new technology. It's kind of built in. So there's going to be a lot more detail when you're doing a capital budget than what shows in this example, but this gives you a sense of kind of the cost and what you're looking for. The other consideration is that when you're looking to expand and do new facilities, I strongly encourage you to work with a good accountant or tax specialist, because there can be special tax incentives for buying equipment, either accelerated depreciation schedules, right? So something that normally you might buy for $50,000, you depreciate over 10 years. Sometimes it might let you depreciate it in a full year, which can help offset your cost of expanding, et cetera. So really strongly encourage you as a growing business, make sure you have a good accountant or tax specialist to help you along the way, because they probably will be able to find some tax incentives, et cetera, as you are expanding your business that can really help, right? And as usual, a really good accountant or a really good tax specialist, essentially, they cost a little bit of money, but they probably will save you that money and the insights that they bring to your business. So once you have your capital budget together, once you have the money together to start to expand your business, then the next piece is looking at your kind of operating plan. And I bring up this, and I just mentioned the issue of taxes. These are all the different budget items. I know this is relatively small on the screen, and we'll share these slides later. But the key is what they're going to look for is you're going to include financials, not only from the past 3 to 5, maybe even 10 years for your business. So what has been your operating expenses, what have been your revenues, your expenses, and your profit, right? But then you're also going to do an estimated, say, over the next 3 to 5 years. If for Delicious Diner, we're looking at expanding over the next 3 years, we're going to show what are going to be our increases in revenues and what are going to be our increases in expenses over that 3 to 5 year period, right? And some of those are going to be just yes, please. Oh my goodness, I apologize.
¿Me escucha? Sí.
Okay. Oh, are they changing now? Okay, yeah, it was, I have 2 screens. I apologize. I wish somebody had said something first. Okay. All right, so we should be on the screen, the financial plan, operating, and projected budgets. Yes? Okay, so I apologize. I'm working with 2 different screens, and I'm looking at one screen and it's changing on my side screen. I apologize. Let me. So let me go back to, since I skipped those screens, thank you, Jessica, for letting me know. So let me go back to the screen that I was showing before. So this was the screen I was talking about with Delicious Diner and doing expansion, right? And the details of that expansion and the numbers that you would show. right, on your equipment and customer seating, computers and registers, et cetera. So looking at the different costs it would be to expand and to grow your business, right? So then the next slide, the one that I was just referring to. So this is what I was just referring to with the last slide. Now the new piece of this is then kind of looking at your operating budget, and you can see this is just a large I don't know, kind of cost that you might incurring as a business, right? So, and again, you want to include your financials for at least the last 3 to 5 years, right? Here's what we've done, and I have an example that I'll show in just a minute of this. And then what do we expect those increases in revenues and expenses to be over the next 3 to 5 years? And again, these are all the different categories that are involved with that. So you want to clarify kind of what's your expected number of customers, right? So part of making your projected revenues and expenses is, what do you see in terms of your increase in customers? What's your average dollar per customer? I talked about that a little bit last week. We talked about with Delicious Diner, one of the ways that they're going to expand is they're hoping to go from about $1.25 million in sales per location to $1.5 million in sales in each location. And part of that growth is going to come from an organic growth in catering services, where they're not going to advertise a lot, but they're going to start doing catering services for customers that request it, and that's one of the ways that they're going to increase, right? So, but again, key to make sure that you're realistic in how your revenues and expenses are going to go over the next several years with kind of modest increases. Obviously, you add a new location and your expenses might go up a little faster than what your revenues until customers get to know you, or maybe you're lucky and your reputation is so good that as soon as you open a new location or expand to a new market, you have as much business as you can handle right away. All right. And again, be very detailed with your expenses, group your expenses into those main categories, because as you grow your business, you want to make sure that you're tracking things like ratios. And I'm not going to talk about this a lot, but you know, in a restaurant, you would expect to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 35% of your expenses being on employees or on payroll. And if, as you're trying to grow your business and all of a sudden you're starting to spend 40 or 45% of your expenses on payroll, you're probably going to have a really hard time making any money, right? That might cut into your profit. So one of the things to track your expenses over time is what's the ratio of each major category of expense to overall expenses. That's one of the ways you track your business growth to make sure that you stay healthy, right? So those are kind of some of the metrics that you use along the way. So these are just some of those categories. So the next one, the next example is kind of the projected budget format. Now, this is not one that's rated. This is a example I pulled from the internet organization, Financial Forecasting Guide from Corporate Finance Institute. But this shows the format of what I'm talking about, of the projected budget format. So if we were Delicious Diner and we're now in 2022, we might show going back to 2021, 2020, 2019, and 2018 as our historical results. And then our forecasted period might be 2022, 23, 24, and 25, right? So this example was a little old, but I think the format of this was very good in terms of just showing, here's what we expect to change in terms of revenues over time. Here's what we've done, and here's what we expect to do looking forward. Now, this example doesn't show the big bumps like opening a new location. This is kind of more of an organization that is growing kind of within one location, not adding a new location where you would see much more of a stair step of jump in revenues, right? Because if we kind of grow, we open a new location and revenues go up, and then we open a new location and they kind of go up, and right. So you're going to get that kind of stair step feeling as you're opening new locations, right? So this is a little different, but this is the basic format of what you would be looking for when you are putting together your projected budget format for your operating expenses. And part of the key to this is, again, you have much more detail than shows in this example, but this is the format, this is the idea of what I was suggesting as you're showing your projected revenues. All right, so much more detailed version of this. The next slide is really looking at your balance sheet. We haven't talked about the balance sheet, and I recognize this is very small, especially if you're looking at your phone. I apologize, this is going to be super tiny. You're not going to be able to read it. But one of the other things that you want to also do to be able to show is to show not only the reflections of changes in revenues and expenses that are on your operating budget, right? So showing that increase in revenues and increase in expenses and bottom line. You really want to show your balance sheet, right? Because the real health of an organization is best understood by looking at the combination of your operating budget, right? And what are your overall profits and your balance sheet, right? So there may be years as a business where you might not make as much money, but if you're growing the business and buying new either equipment or opening new facilities, that might cut into your profits for a year, but it positions you for future growth. So you may be able to see, and again, for an organization like Delicious Diner, you would look maybe back 3 to 5 years and show, here's what our balance sheet is, here's what our total assets are, right, or our assets, here's what our liabilities, here's what we owe, and then what are our net assets, right, our owner's equity at the bottom. And so you want to track that over time. And then obviously this is going to change pretty significantly with Delicious Diner, because every time we open a new location, whether we're going into a new restaurant or an existing restaurant that we take over that might cost us around $70,000, or we're moving into a retail location we're spending $130,000, a lot of that equipment and other materials that we're putting into that goes onto our balance sheet, right? So that now we have more assets, we have more owner's equity as a business because we're taking on new facilities. We're paying for some of that maybe out of existing profits. We may be paying for some of that through loans, et cetera. So the balance sheet becomes a big piece of also, if I'm going to go to look for an investor, or if I'm going to go to a bank or somewhere else to get a loan to expand, they're going to want to know, how is this expansion plan and how is the new equipment, how is the new capital budget you're expecting going to play out in terms of your balance sheet over the next 3 to 5 years? How is this going to impact your overall net assets? But like, are you going to go into debt? So I'm not going to talk a lot about things like debt ratio, but one of the things a loan officer or investor would want to see is you're taking on so much debt that it's hard for you to cover that particular debt. So this is where your balance sheet comes in. Right. Let me do just a quick pause there. I want to just make sure that we're doing okay. Chat is if there's any. Good. Okay. I got a thumbs up from Gustavo that we're good to go.
Todo bien.
Okay. All right. So the next piece of your plan is really talking about the key people that are going to help make success. And as I talked about just a little bit last week, so part of the personnel is not only the people who are in the organization, but also your partners, right? So one of the things that as you're growing your business, you already have some existing relationships. And we talked about the example with Delicious Diner, that one of the things that has made them special is they work with a lot of local farmers and a lot of producers to get the stuff that they put into their food, right? So these partnerships with local farmers, local producers, again, I use the example of say honey or beef or pork or produce. The people that are helping to grow that are basically our raw materials as a restaurant, are partners for us. And if we want to continue to use those partners, they have to know that as we grow as a business, they're going to have to be able to help meet that need for growth, right? So we're going to provide some details on owners, the managers, and the key partners, right? So what's their background? How do we know that they're positioned for success? What's been their success in growing restaurants and other locations? We might talk about our chefs, et cetera. This would be where kind of your industry expertise comes in. Where are we finding the new people to help us expand in terms of our cooks or other people? You may include also ongoing education, et cetera. I mean, maybe as a manager, maybe when the folks that started Delicious Diner, 15 plus years ago, they just really did it out of love of the food industry and their ability to cook and some relationships they had in the farming industry. And maybe what they've done over time is they've done a lot of continuing education related to finances and budgeting and being able to do financial analysis. That would be something that would be important to tell prospective investors and or prospective people who are going to give you a loan of, look, as we've grown as a business, we have made sure we've kept up with our own education related to financial management, related to budgeting, related to the other parts of running the business. I also suggested one of the things we talked about last time in terms of marketing the sales plan that Delicious Diner was doing was they were going to hire somebody that was a vendor relations specialist, right? Somebody who really specialized in working with the farmers and the other producers that we're working with, because managing those relationships is such a vital part of our business, right? So that becomes part of the details on the left-hand column of providing details on key partners, right? So if we give a little bit more specific example, who are the people in Delicious Diner that drive our success? Well, we have expert front of house managers. We hire the best, right? Some of those may be the people who started the business, but we hire people who have a great reputation for running the front of the house. One of the pieces of evidence we would have for that goes back to an example I shared in last week's workshop, where we have very low turnover for a restaurant, right? So we suggest the average restaurant has 85% turnover and our turnover rate's only 32%. We're doing something really well. And that would come from having not only good front of house managers, but also having people who really know how to run the back house, right? The kitchen staff, the dishwashing staff, right? The prep cooks and everything else. So we have top rated chefs that have local connections. We have cross-trained, highly efficient staff, right? Where staff members who come in, if we get backed up in the kitchen, somebody who's doing a wait staff or hosting can go help cover in the back. Or we have people who work in the back of the house normally who, when we get really busy up front, can help serve food or clean tables or do some other things, right? So in a lot of industries, right, having people who are cross-trained can really help. So we could talk about how well we do our cross-training as a restaurant. And one of the reasons why we're successful is because of our cross-training. We also talked about, again, this community relations. Who's doing our community relationships? Right. Talked about then we would also focus a little bit on our valuable partners, the local farmers. Maybe there's transportation. Maybe we don't do our own trucking. Maybe there's a special company we use that actually helps get our produce and our meat and our dairy products and everything from our producers to our restaurants in very timely fashion, right? So that we don't have to whole lot of food extra inventory. So if we have a really good transportation specialist that we can order something from a producer and we can get it here the next day, right? If we have that relationship, that's something special, because those of you who know the restaurant industry know that food waste is a huge issue, right? So if we order too much food and we only get a delivery once a week, it's hard to keep the food as fresh as if we can get deliveries every couple of days from local providers. Our food stays fresher, we throw away less, costs us less money over time, right? So that transportation specialist in a restaurant might be a great thing. And then the network of business advisors. I already talked about the importance of having a good tax specialist or tax accountant, maybe have a good legal team, maybe you have good business advisors through the Beaverton Area Chamber of Commerce or some other source, right? So those partners are also helpful to you in running a business and telling your story to prospective investors and or loan people. All right. And then the other piece of it is, what other relationships do we have that are going to help us grow the business? In every industry, there are associations. So maybe it's a restaurant association. If you work in hardware, maybe there's an association of hardware. If you run a greenhouse, right, there's associations, national and local associations of nurseries for ongoing education. If you work in childcare, there's people who have expertise and can help guide you in growing your childcare business, right? So those strong relationships with kind of support entities, and in this case, I said the Oregon Health Authority, right? These are the ones that kind of help govern what happens in food production and in restaurants. So a good positive relationship there can really help. In a lot of ways, that helps in terms of the permitting process and getting open. As many of you know, when you try to expand a business, one of the things that slows things down is either construction that gets backed up or not getting a permit or license in time, and now you're delayed for 2 or 3 more weeks. We're supposed to have a grand opening and that gets put off. So having those relationships can also be very helpful, right? You may have local relationships with community college or university related to interns or other advisors. And in the case of a restaurant, there's a National Restaurant Association, but again, in each industry, there are associations that can be really beneficial. Okay, so then the last piece, right? And again, so we've gone through the different components of the business plan, and the executive summary is something that comes up first, but you basically write it last, right? So you've gone through all the other components of your business plan, right? And so at the very end, it's like, okay, what are the most important pieces? What are the pieces that I want to put up front? So when somebody opens up my business plan and I say, hey, you're looking to invest in an organization, or you're you're a potential loan officer and you're considering giving us a loan, or we're looking for new partners, or maybe even hiring employees. It's like, well, here's what we're trying to do. And your executive summary is the highlights of those areas, right? So your growing business plan tool to attract investors, secure financing, et cetera, to grab partners. So the example, and again, this is a very shortened version of it with Delicious Diner, is what do? We serve unique food, high quality food with tremendous service at good prices, right? That's our tagline, right? So then there's a little bit of history. So this goes back to the history pieces. From our humble beginnings in one restaurant, 2005, we've been very intentional in growth. We've never lost sight of our aim to delight our customers through great food and great service, right? So now we are positioned for growth and take the next big step. And here's how we're going to do it. We want to open 6 new locations throughout Washington County in the next 3 years, which will more than double our current employee base of 72 FTEs, full-time equivalents. We will expand our network of local food producers and suppliers, create even more local jobs with local profits, et cetera, right? And one of the things we highlighted earlier is the increased interest in local food, supporting local organizations, et cetera. So that's something that's meaningful to a lot of people. And our goal as an organization is to increase our revenues from $1.25 million per location, which currently 4 locations is $5 million, to 1.5. And when we grow and now have 10 locations, we're going to grow our organization from $5 million to $15 million in revenues in a year. And with our estimated profits, going back to all our numbers, et cetera, of $500,000. Right. Now that may, from a restaurant standpoint, that would actually be relatively significant, right? If you could make $500,000 of profits on $15 million in sales, you're doing pretty good as a restaurant. But these are the kind of numbers that you want to put into an executive summary, right? The details of here's the snapshot of what we're trying to accomplish. And when we are successful, this is what that success is going to look like. Okay, so there's a lot of information. Let me look to Gustavo and see, are there any questions in the chat? Anybody have a question they would like to ask?
Hasta el momento vamos bien. We are fine.
Okay, very good. Okay. The next thing I wanted to highlight is just some resources that are available for growing for business plans, right? So there's a bunch of different resources. And again, this presentation will be available. You could either email myself or Gustavo, and we can send you a copy of the slides. And then you can just use the hyperlinks that are within the slides to be able to get these different resources. But there are many, many different sources of getting templates for business plans if you're looking for guidance. So we have templates here at the Beaverton Chamber. I'd be super happy to share those with you. Also, if you go to the Small Business Administration, the national organization, they have some really good guides on writing a business plan, right? They have a template that's kind of a fill-in and it's got really nice, clear guidelines on what they're looking for and how much detail to put, et cetera. So another source is SCORE, which is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. They are a national support organization for entrepreneurs, both startup businesses, but also growing businesses. So SCORE has their own version of templates, and you'll see some similarities between the SBA or Small Business Administration guides and the SCORE guides. There also is, through the Small Business Administration, each of the different states have many different entities called the Small Business Development Centers. Oregon has a cluster of small business development centers. Many of them are located at community colleges and other locations. They have a system in Oregon called LivePlan, which is basically a walk you through template to enter information and create a business plan. So it's kind of a step-by-step process. So you can go to the Oregon SBDC. They have a really good guide. And then Business Express, the state of Oregon. So it's out of the Secretary of State's office to support business, something called Business Express, if you're not familiar with it. They also have a business plan guide that can walk you through. So they have different entities. I'm not going to click through the details, but these are just 5 different sources that you can look for assistance, if you will, in putting together a business plan. And again, as you're putting together a business plan, Gustavo and I are always happy to meet with you, to talk with you. about the different pieces of your business plan and to help kind of review and say, hey, maybe you should add some more financial information. Maybe you need to add more detail on your marketing plan, or what's the better market analysis? What other data could you have to strengthen your plan? So those are some of the sources for business plans, right? So, and then the other thing to think about as you are looking to expand your business is where can you get this data? So I talked about market data. I talked about population data. I talked about, is there a growing market? Is there a growing population? If you're a childcare, how do we know that there's going to be need for more childcare businesses? If you are in landscaping, how do we know that there's more demand for your landscaping business or construction business, et cetera? So there's several different sources out there, and one of the best sources you can actually go to is if you go to your local library. So local libraries have all sorts of information in databases that you can't just access by going to the internet. They're subscription-based databases, and they have each of the different libraries. I'll use the example just of our local Beaverton, the main library over on Fifth. There's somebody, her name is Jill Adams, and she's a reference librarian that works in the business collection. That if you said, I'm trying to expand my business, I'm looking for evidence that the increased population or how much people are spending in either restaurants or in childcare, et cetera, I'm looking for data to support my business growth, the reference librarians can help you and find that data. So if you're not in Beaverton, if you're in Hillsborough, if you're in Summit and Tigard, your local libraries are a great source of finding data because they can help you find information and data that you might not be able to find just by doing a search on the internet on your own. There also is a huge treasure of data, if you will, through the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. But it's not always really easy to navigate. There is lots and lots of data out there about how many people are being employed, how much money do people spend. There's the Bureau of Census.gov. There's just so much information that's available. It's not always easy to get through. And again, a reference librarian can really help you. A business reference librarian can help you navigate some of these systems. Otherwise, no, if you're going to look for Census.gov or you're going to look for labor statistics through BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, know that it's going to take you some time to learn that system. This is not an intuitive sense, so it'll take you a little bit. The other source is the Oregon SBDC has its own Market Research Institute, and they can help you find data. Some of their services, they actually will charge you a little bit for. Some of them are free, so you'd have to talk to them about what you're looking for and find out if that's a fee service or if it's a free service. But they're another source of information as you're looking to expand your business. I just clicked where I didn't really want to. Hold on a sec, let me close that one out. Sorry about that. Okay. Finally, a few additional resources that might be helpful for you, right? So, and some of these are not just not business plan necessarily, but they're just places that you can go to find other information to help you in developing your business plan. So again, I mentioned Business Express. They have a toolkit that kind of walk you through a whole bunch of different things. So you may want to go there. They have a toolkit that has all sorts of things about putting together a business plan, some things about licensing, et cetera. So a great source of information. The Beaverton Library is part of the collective. So there's the Washington County Cooperative Library Services. Sometimes going to the larger collective of libraries can have a little bit more. The collection of libraries may have a database that one of the single libraries may or may not necessarily have. So the Cooperative Library Services is another one. And if you look, the subject 58 that you noticed that's on the slide right here is kind of their business and market data, right? So if you're, I'm not going to click on it because it'll kind of take us into a maze, and I don't want to get into that maze right now, but that's another source of information that can really be helpful to you as you're putting together your growing business plan, right? Obviously, the Oregon Secretary of State has all sorts of information about legal stuff, and this is related to startup business and licensing, et cetera. As you're looking to expand, obviously, you need to make relationships with your local city officials to get local business licenses and filing fees and all those kind of things. So there's a link for the city of Beaverton. And then there is a start a business guide, and this is really related to kind of starting a business, not necessarily growing a business, but there's all the details about starting a business that are available on that particular source. So again, we will make these slides available to you, so you can just click on these. All these hyperlinks are active, so once you have these slides, you can just click on them and they'll take you to those particular sources. The last potential source of information is just if you need assistance as you're putting together your business plan. Gustavo and I are very happy to help you in that process. All you need to do is reach out to us and contact us. Our contact information is on this slide. You can either call us or send us an email, and we'd be very happy to sit down with you. We could come visit you at your business. You could come visit us here at the Chamber of Commerce, and we would be happy to help you develop your growing business plan. So apologize for the background conversation. So that's the details that I wanted to get through today. Does anybody have any questions that you would like to ask? We have about 10 minutes left. I know Jessica has to leave right at 10 o'clock, so we'll probably end a few minutes early, but do any of you have any specific questions on any of the material that we've gone over today? I'm looking at the chat. I don't see any. I can give a few more minutes. We're happy to answer questions, or are there other questions just about business plans in general, or about services or ways that we can help you in growing your business? Gustavo, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Buenos días a todos. No, realmente no tengo alguna duda ahorita. Sí quiero agregar algo. Las sesiones, como verán, ya estamos cambiando para el día martes a las 9. Pero les quería mencionar que para facilitar el acceso, el mismo link que les he enviado constantemente va a ser siempre el mismo. Entonces, si por alguna razón no puedo yo enviar el link por texto, va a ser siempre el mismo. Entonces, es muy importante. José, Miguel, Norma, alguna pregunta que tengan acerca de su negocio, que quisieran saber un poco más, alguna duda. José, ¿cómo te fue con tus empleados?
No, Gustavo, yo no tengo preguntas, yo solo estoy escuchando.
Muy bien, Norma.
Thank you, Norma.
Gustavo, ya te cambié el nombre, ¿eh?
¿Mandé?
Ya te cambié el nombre, te dije José, estoy en la junta de la otra. No, ya no te llamas Gustavo. ¿No se escucha bien?
Sí, sí te escuchamos. No, está ahí José. Hay otra persona que se llama José también.
Sí, Gustavo, soy yo. Pues sí, estamos tratando de hacer lo que nos recomendaste como un plan para que ellos lo sigan como ¿cómo se puede decir? Una guía donde ellos puedan ejecutar el mismo trabajo que nosotros. Y sí está, bueno, ya hablamos con la persona que nos anda ayudando y sí está funcionando.
Good to hear. Glad it's helping. Okay, are there other questions? Does anybody have any questions you'd like to ask? We have a few more minutes, but I'm happy to end early if we don't have any other questions, but I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to ask questions.
No.
Okay, I don't see other questions. Again, as always, if you would like some assistance or you think of questions after our workshop is over, please feel free to reach out to Gustavo or myself, Gustavo@beaverton.org or Rob@beaverton.org. We'd be very happy to find the time to meet with you and to help you in developing a business plan or other ways of helping your growing business. So thank you again to Gustavo for helping set things up for today. Thank you again to Jessica for helping with our translating service. And again, these slides and the video will be available to you
Rob.
shortly after we're done. Yes, please, Gustavo.
Fabiola have a question. It's in the chat. When is the right time to grow your business?
Great question, Fabiola. My response to that would be when you feel like you are ready to take on the additional responsibility and that you have good people to help you grow your business, right? It's really difficult as a small business owner to expand if you don't have good people and you don't have sound finances to be able to grow your business, and having a sense that the market's really ready, that there's going to be an opportunity to help grow your business. And I'm sorry, Fabiola, if you could tell me what kind of business do you operate? Fabiola, if you either put in the chat or if you just on mute, and I would like to know what your business is. Okay, I see you can't open your microphone. That's fine. If you could just put in the chat, what type of business do you? Grocery store. Oh, perfect. Grocery store. Okay, so several things, right? So if you're running a grocery store and you feel like you have, so the question there would be, are you looking to expand your existing location? And do you have the space to expand? Or are you looking maybe to open a new location that's bigger? Or are you looking to open a new location to have a second location? There's very different ways to grow your business, right? So what I'll say, easiest way is if you have enough space in your store to expand. So maybe you're in a strip center and you're in a mall and there's enough room to expand into nearby businesses when another business doesn't, new location, right? But there becomes this ability, you have to have several systems that can manage the growth. So if you're going to say double the size of your store, open a new store, you're now going to be doubling your number of employees. You're going to have double the number of deliveries. You're going to have double the amount of merchandise. Your technology is going to have to be able to grow with you. So it's making sure that all the different pieces that make your business successful, right? Customer service and inventory management, and making sure that you have a good supply chain and that you have good employees to help keep things in stock and to keep things clean, et cetera. You have to make sure that you have the right people, the right facilities, the right technology, and also having the money in place to help grow. Because typically when you're growing your business, there's an investment up front that it's going to cost you some money to get ready to grow. So it's that combination of people, technology, equipment, and finances. It's all those pieces have to be ready for you to grow, for your growth to be successful. So I think that would be my quickest summary of what I think of how do you know, or when you know it's the right time to grow. And again, part of that is, are you ready to take on? Obviously, when your business starts growing, it's going to be some additional responsibility for you as the owner. So it's going to be some additional time, time working at the store, a little less time with family and those kind of things. So that becomes an important consideration. But people, finances, technology, equipment, supply chain, are your suppliers ready for you to grow? Those are the things that you have to make sure, yes, all those systems say we're ready and we are positioned to have some successful growth. I hope that answers your question, Fabiola. Yeah, good point. Last question is competition is very aggressive at this point, including Winco. Yeah, and this is one of those challenges of growing in an industry like grocery that is a very, very competitive industry, right? There's you're competing with people who they do so much volume, you can't compete with them on price, right? And if you try to be a low cost provider, it becomes really challenging. And so part of that is how do you differentiate yourself from the other competitors in the marketplace, whether it's Winco or Target or Walmart or Fred Meyer, or there are so many people out there in that grocery space that if you have that real clear niche, right? When maybe it's the fresh food that you produce, or maybe it's you specialize in local food providers or local vendors, or you're serving a particular population. It's sometimes tough, and that's why trying to open up brand new locations sometimes be really challenging, where if you can expand in the existing location and it costs less money, it may be a little less risky than trying to open up a brand new location where there's lots of competition. The other one is if you're looking to grow into a new market, where's kind of the new population, where's the new areas of, say, the county or the state where you want to grow, where there's new population coming in, where there still isn't what I'll call convenient places for people to go grocery shopping. So that's the other one, is looking at kind of where is the competition? Are there pockets where, hey, this would be a great location because there's nobody like us in this particular neighborhood or in this particular part of the county. So, and again, Fabiola, I'd be very happy to sit down and talk to you. Gustavo would be very happy to sit down and talk to you to just kind of help do kind of an assessment of are you ready as a business in those different areas of people and finances and systems? Does it seem like you are positioned well for taking on that additional responsibility that comes with growth? So great question. Thank you so much for asking the questions. Okay, we have just a couple minutes. Does anybody have any other questions while we still have our interpreter for another minute or two? Okay, so again, we are playing with the new time for our business workshops. Please continue to look at the Chamber of Commerce events page for the upcoming workshops. Next week, we have a workshop on March 1st, right, next Tuesday. And it's, is this necessary? Accounting is the language of business. And Gustavo will be guiding that. We'll hear some good tidbits about learning accounting. That's what's on for next week on the 1st of March. And on March 8th, we're having a workshop with Energy Trust of Oregon that will talk about how you can help save costs by saving energy with your business. And then they will also talk about some opportunities they have to help support your business in becoming more energy efficient and in saving costs there. So those are a couple of the workshops that are coming up. Once again, I'd like to thank Gustavo for helping to set things up. Thank you again to Jessica for her translating services, very much appreciated. And we will, if you would like to see a copy of these slides, send an email to Gustavo or I. We will be happy to share them with you. So thank you all very much for your time. Thank you for your questions. And we look forward to working with you and supporting you in your business growth. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Adiós a todos. Gracias.
Gracias, Gustavo, a todos.
Muchas gracias, Gustavo. Gracias a todos.
Hasta luego. Buena semana.
Adiós, igualmente.
Hasta luego.
Igualmente, Gustavo.
Martes. Bye.